Sup, guys? I'm here with Mebot, the person who created and maintains the huge eHP document that I often refer to when talking about survivability of ships. The conversation gets pretty in depth in terms of mathematical language, and at some parts, even I wasn't quite following 100%. But regardless, I hope you guys are able to enjoy the conversation. Okay, feel free to introduce yourself and share as much as you're comfortable with.
All right. Thanks for bringing me on today, Jimmy. Uh, what's up, Gym Cells? My name is Mebot. You can call me Mebot. I do eHP for Azure Lane. I like math and analytical problems in general, so that's why I have an AA sheet as well. It was an interesting problem to solve. Thanks again for bringing me up today. I'm glad to be on this talk.
So, how did you get into Azurlane, and is there anything else you're working on aside from the eHP sheet as well as the AA sheet?
I got into Azure Lane like 7 or so years ago. It was in the very beginning. It was my first gacha game when I was like already a weeaboo, so I was into anime otaku culture, and I was basically instantly hooked. I was there for like the Neptunia collab, and I got into it during high school when a friend showed me the game. He still plays the game with me now, and we talk about it, like leaks and events and complaints about ships and gameplay. And I got into eHP because, well, I'm a nerd. I feel ontologically bad if I'm just playing a game without getting into the nitty gritty and like studying it. The wiki already had like a math formula for eHP in the damage calc section, and formulas have behaviors. So I just went in. First, I did little unit tests using simple ships like San Diego or Bryn or Portland to get a good relative feel of what the community has already experienced. And as time went on and I got more confident with my calculations, I started doing EHP calculations for more and more complicated ships. And eventually that evolved into like EHP2, EHP3, and that's where we sit now with the current formulation of the EHP document, where I've done more or less the relatively complete theory for every Vanguard ship girl in the game.
Are there some common misconceptions about eHP that you notice people often have and you think everyone should be informed about? Or any kind of assumptions that you make while you do your eHP calculations that people maybe miss?
All right, this is gonna be a long one, so you guys better strap in. A problem that every theory faces, whether or not you're in physics, biology, statistics, computer science, finance, or even just in everyday life, is that the theory is constructed to model reality. It is not reality. And more often than not, it won't do that perfectly. For example, my EHP document has a column called 3 standard deviations absolute, which takes the EHP distribution, attaches a formal notion of variance to it, blah, 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 blah. And it's like a coin flip. This is flipping your coins is a well-established statistical probabilistic theory, and I'm applying the EHP model to that because they're asking the same question. That's all just math theory. The model's still a toy model, using a coin flip and the central limit theorem. We lack important variables like enemy damage, different magnitudes and types of any damage. Like maybe Ryusei that Taiho launches, enemy Ryusei, fires like 13 pitter patter bullets at you, and they each deal 16 damage, versus a torpedo that deals like 900 damage. Those are two different magnitudes of any damage. Um, we have allied ship movement to take into account. That affects the amount of damage that a ship would take. We have skill variance and gear variance and so on. Basically, anything that you can list that you can think of, oh, I can see how this would affect the EHP of a ship. It probably does. And as a result of that, I'm obligated to try and account for these variables in my EHP model. I think it's a good start because what I have so far, it covers our basis. It gives you the expectation value based on all the skills and gear of a ship. And I think that part is very solid. It's good theory. Otherwise, the theory's been through a lot, and there's been a lot that's been worked on in terms of the actual predictive power of the model, which is where a theory truly gets its grit from. But I haven't yet done the unit tests for each and every ship yet to try and actually claim that this model is truly predictive.
When you say unit test, I'm assuming that it will be something like, for example, if you have Portland, who is 100%, let's say, in some given battle, let's just use Taiho Meta as an example. And then, for example, you had another ship that was, let's say, 50% compared to Portland. I would assume that in practice, you will want it so that the ship that has 50% eHP relative to Portland would be alive for half the time, right? And that's the goal?
That's right. That's an important assumption that I make, that when we're dealing with EHP like this and I give you like a 50% value, the regular assumption here is to go, oh, okay, so the ship survives 50% of the time as Portland. Strictly speaking, that might not be true at all times. It depends on the boss, sure. But an important assumption I make when I run through these EHP calculations is that I assume that whatever amount of damage the enemy deals in 87 seconds in order to sink the ship girl. And so the scalar measurements by which, if ships have time-dependent skills, that might be different for whether or not they die in the later half or the earlier half of a battle. For example, smoke screens deploy, like, 3 times at the beginning and 2 times near the end of the battle. If a ship dies halfway through the battle, if she has like 50% EHP, then she wouldn't have been able to deploy 2 of her smoke screens. And these time biased considerations are not present in my current eHP theory.
Yeah, I could see how that could be very difficult. Like, just because a battle is 87 seconds definitely does not mean that the DPS from the enemy is constant throughout the 87 seconds. They could deal 90% of their damage within a 10-second window, and then pretty much every ship that has just enough HP to survive that 90% of the damage would have the same amount of time survived in the fight.
That's right. And so an important thing to note is the measurement of eHP, the numeric value that I have, is 1 degree or 2 or 3 or 4. It's separated from the notion of survival time. And one way to get past that notion of survival time is to, just like you did, quantify the distribution of enemy damage as a function of time. And we can grab that distribution, grab our eHP distribution from the coin flip theory, and combine them under a convolution. And that should give us a probability density of ship survival as a function of time. I haven't gotten there yet because no one bothers to mine the enemy damage distributions as a function of time. Another problem that I'm working on to solve in eHP is exactly this. It's that I can't convert eHP into like a time alive measurement, or even simpler, like a binary. If we were to put out assumptions like, okay, Hornet Meta puts out exactly 300,000 damage, I would not be able to tell you whether or not Portland or Napoli or Eldridge or Abulin would survive that fight. And this is like a complaint that I get a lot during EHP, like EHP gatekeepers, like, oh, Mebot, EHP is actually X, or actually Mebot, EHP is actually Y. I can't tell you actual ship survival. I'm just giving numbers. So that's the flip side of EHP. And if we want to do that, we'll have to gather enemy damage values and enemy damage distributions.
I have noticed a tendency to, well, really, people just kind of grab images of numbers that are posted by other people. A lot of times it's just brainstorming, like somebody's brainstorming a fleet and how much theoretical damage it could do. But it gets shared around without context, which I'm sure happens for your eHP numbers as well, and then they just like run with the wildest assumptions. But I mean, to me, I just see it as a tool, and you have to know how to use the tool. The eHP number doesn't mean that that's exactly how long you're going to survive in that fight. But if you know what it's telling you, then you can extract value out of it.
Yep, that's perfect. That's exactly the type of intention I want to be gathered from the numbers that I post. They're a general reference as to how much damage a ship can take, but that's not necessarily time survival. There are some more problems with like the eHP distribution and everything. For example, I don't know what World 15 and World 14 damage distribution looks like. There are some hit shields I have in mind. I want to normalize eHP to front, mid, back positions. I want to do backline eHP. Each time I figure something out about eHP, it's a door that leads to a maze filled with more doors, and it's just all math. And sometimes you got to take a deep breath. If anyone out there knows what World 14 and 15 damage distributions look like, I would very much like to receive those. Thank you very much.
So I was wondering, because it seems like, I think I remember back in the day you would update the spreadsheet pretty quickly, but how long does it take you these days to push an update after an event drops? Because you get the new eHP numbers pretty quickly, but they're not added onto the document until sometime after.
Okay. That whole lag in time might make it seem like the process is complicated, but it's not. It's super easy to get updates after an event. That's why I do them so fast. I just have to change like a single line in a big Excel spreadsheet, and then I plug in that spreadsheet through like Python, NumPy, and I paste the results into a Google Sheet. I'm just too lazy to do the pasting right now. I should probably be a little bit more robust when updating the sheet.
Okay. And if it's not too difficult, then maybe I can give you a nudge here and there.
All right, thank you. I appreciate nudges from the community. Ping me as soon as you can, right? Everyone, I'm talking at everyone. Ping me whenever you have a question about eHP or whenever you don't see anything in the AA sheet or eHP document. This keeps me on my toes and is very important for maintaining the quality of like a guide.
Before I forget, were there any other challenges you faced while working on the eHP document?
In the beginning, while the theory was getting developed, the harshest barrier I faced was probably pushback by established preconceptions and myths about eHP and ship tankiness in general, and like entrenched vets who had their own notions and calcs on eHP. For example, they had an idea that armor types were completely incomparable, or that eHP is not a real or legitimate measurement because of variance, or that it's unreliable because it's relative per battle per ship and therefore not absolute. Honestly, it's a huge list of complaints. I'm glad that most of them have quieted down because, you know, whenever you point out a problem in the theory like that, I'll just fill it back up and we're done and easy. They don't talk they don't talk about eHP anymore. Those critics, and that made the process a lot smoother. Unironically, I don't have to explain the things I've already explained before to people. Another thing that I'm doing is I'm in the process of trying to type up 3 different documents, like PDF documents, to try and explain the eHP formulation to different levels of audiences, beginner, intermediate, advanced. And each document will have like a typed up textbook explanation lesson on eHP theory. I hope I do it well. That's just in the workings. I typed up like a third of the document in one of my classes. I hope that was fun. I hope that will be fun. And the main problem that I have right now, after I've completed most of the eHP variance and expectation value theory, is computational problems. I did some tech comparisons the other day where I grabbed my entire eHP chart and I calculated eHPs for every iteration of tech available. The techs that are important that I did the run through was HP tech for like DD, CL, CAs, and evasion tech for DD, CL, CA. And it was, 300 chips or so, maybe 400, for 250 bullet types, for for 256, HP ticks in the tech space by 36 evasion ticks in the tech space. That's a lot of combinations. The script like ground to a halt, and I had to wait 2 hours for it to finish. Completely unreliable. I need to find a simpler way to boil down the enemy distribution stuff, and quick. And otherwise, it'll get more and more complicated and out of hand as more enemies and situations are added to the game.
I think for fleet tech, you should just start with max, because that's something that everyone can achieve at some point. Like, if you give arbitrary HP and evasion tech, I don't think it's really that... Like, it's only relevant to a person up until they gain an extra... like, gain their next point in HP or evasion, so I think just having no tech and then max tech is already enough.
Yeah, I wanted to try and pump out the eHP list with the different techs to actually, prove that statement. And thankfully, you are correct. And even then, you mentioned arbitrary tech. That works too. Depending on however much HP tech you have or however much evasion tech you have, the list itself doesn't really change. Maybe some ships shift like up and down 1 or 2 spaces here or there, or swap places with another ship, like 3 or so spaces away. But the whole big picture ranking doesn't really change from 0 to max tech or in between. So I'm putting it out here right now for all you listening. Tech doesn't really affect relative EHP comparisons, so you can leave with the current EHP chart, which is 0 tech. You can honestly just consider that even if you are a max tech player.
Okay, but how about this? Off the top of your head, do you know what the max destroyer HP and evasion tech numbers are?
HP is 256, right? And evasion is 36.
Okay, about that much. And how much of an increase would that be for a ship like Z52?
I have that in my EHP chart. You can go through this exercise with me as well. Just pull up the EHP chart, and on the very bottom, click on Other Lists. And once you've done that, you can find tech matrices. If you scroll a little bit to the right, they're heat maps giving you percentage improvements of EHP based on your hull type. Max tech for a DD gives you roughly 11.65% more EHP.
Okay, so you guys can decide if that's worth it. You just gotta do 250 points of HP and 36 points of evasion, and you'll get a 11-ish% increase in EHP.
But the argument gets even better if you're not a destroyer. If you're a cruiser, it's not 11.
Oh.
It's 3%.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm already done all that, so it's kind of whatever to me, but yeah. 3 whole points. That's pretty good.
In real life, well, when I say real life, I mean experimentally. I don't think I've encountered a single situation where the predictive power of my EHP theory is within acceptable margins.
Mm-hmm.
It's all wrong. I pulled out measurements of like normalized lifetime measurements of Harbiter for like 3 months ago. And when I mean normalized lifetime, let us recall the conversation where we proposed a hypothetical boss that does 95% of its damage at the end of the battle, right?
Yeah.
The way you'd normalize your lifetime in that battle is by only taking a look at that last part of the battle, because that's where the bulk of the enemy damage comes in, and counting the seconds that the ship survives in that super heavy barrage. And if you do that cutting off consideration correctly, it should roughly match your EHP. So I took 15 measurements of like 12 ships. The values weren't like horribly or absolutely wrong, but they were wrong. As far as I know, I'm unequipped to rectify these issues without knowing things like, enemy damage distribution, ship movement, ship damage magnitudes, and so on. I'm just glad the errors aren't 400% or negative 400%. And I'm surprised that the values were decent for ships whose skills like aren't annoying. The errors are like more like 5 to 70%, depending on the ship, in absolute value, not Portland's. So as it is, I really think that the EHP sheet is only useful for getting a good idea of the relative tankiness of ships. Not lifetime survived, not whether or not they will survive, just relative lifetime. If X is tankier than Y, the sheet will let you know on average. There will be many situations where it's like an edge case. Okay, I say edge case when it's probably more like 30-40% of situations where an average EHP notion is a little bit off. And so if you were to use the eHP tool, use it as like a fleet building tool. Maybe like your Prinzoigan isn't being tanky enough for your mob or boss fleet, and so you got to swap in a tankier ship. You look at my sheet for that.
Yeah, that's pretty much how I use it as well. And thank you for the honesty.
Okay, perfect. Of course. Honesty is a good policy when we're in this space, because if I'm dishonest about my calculations, how do you trust them?
And I gotta be honest with you, you said you were writing those guides, 3 different versions, nobody's reading that.
No, that's fine. There are people that like to criticize my EHP, and so I could just point them to the guide. And there's also a small subset of people that are genuinely curious, that will read the guide, and so I'm doing those 3 guides as a service to them, and also as like a pedagogical exercise for myself, right? If I can write down these 3 different guides, the more I write them down, the more I'll know how to explain EHP, the more I'll get like higher level vernacular and vocabulary to describe EHP problems, meaning that I'll do better when talking to some noob in like Gen Chat.
Mm-hmm. Something else I wanted to follow up on as well was the AA sheet, because I'm not really sure where to find the link for it. Because I know there's plenty of places I can find the eHP sheet, but I don't think I've ever gotten a link or a place I could access the link to the AA one. Yeah.
Okay. I'm open up Sam Hart's ECGC right now.
Okay.
Top bar, click on tools, and scroll down until you find my section on the tools, where the EHP chart and the AA sheet are listed.
Okay, I see it.
Thank you, Sam Hart.
All right. Yeah, I was using I think Nagami's website to find your eHP chart, so
that
I
works
couldn't
too.
find it.
That works too. Nagami, put my AA chart on your website.
Yeah, you mentioned you started during the Neptunia collab. That's actually before when I started. I think I started after that.
I'm a little bit of a vet. Don't take my word for that.
Yeah, I didn't expect that. Okay, I think we're pretty much wrapped up with eHP then, right?
That's right.
Okay.
Thank you guys for tuning into the eHP section.
All right. Now, in my previous conversation with Sam Hart, he randomly called out another content creator and put them on blast. I'm thinking of making this a recurring part of these conversations, so is there anyone you would like to take the opportunity to put on blast?
I would like to put Ectol on blast. And the reason for this
Ectol?
is they've been huge. What is it? Ectol, like sounded out, right? ECTL, Ectol.
Okay, the English community tier list.
That's like the tier list.
Okay, go on.
Yeah. So the problem I have with Ectol is that they've been huge critics of my EHP theory, basically from the start. No matter which stage of EHP I was on, they've always had like 1 or 2 quips to say. And they weren't even like you or Sam or Tsuchiguma about it. They were so elitist about it. And honestly, I was having none of that. So I just ignored them for most of the time and went into my own little EHP chart. The more I did my EHP, the less their concerns were valid. So that just happened naturally. And now if you go into like their cute little Discord and do the /EHP command on their bot, the ranger puts out like a sad little blurb about how, all EHP models make some assumptions, as if to say that doing EHP calcs at all is like not nearly as relevant as a tier list. And so I'd like to put them on blast for that, for not doing EHP. I remember when you guys said that you can put yourselves into a room for 2 hours and come out with a better model than me. It's been 4 years. Come up.
Okay, so you're basically saying they got a little bit of a echo chamber going on there.
A little bit.
Okay. And they're not the brightest of people, which I do not condone this message, by the way.
I wouldn't say that they're not the brightest, but they certainly have no EHP insight.
Okay. And obviously, I'm not part of this. I'm just giving you a platform.
That's right.
Okay. Have you ever thought about doing DPS calculations?
Oh man, DPS calculations. I'm down for doing DPS calculations. I've already been thinking of like how to structure a DPS calculation because yeah, I want to avoid as much bias as possible. And one way I've just been thinking of trying to get it started is like I just want to calculate like raw damage output first, and then after that I'll try and do like angular assumptions or something. There are a lot of things to consider, and honestly, I'm pretty intimidated. To all of you who do DPS calcs out there, like props to you guys. I'll come soon, like in 8 years. I'll need to do a lot more asking around before I actually get to calculating the DPS of even like a single ship, and then I'll just generalize that to the entire ship array. I'll probably do an example calc of like Portland first, and I'll have to run that calculation by every veteran I know. And the closest thing I've gone to doing DPS calculations is when I do calculations for the eHP of the enemy instead. And so that like flips the calculation on its head, and I'm still not doing DPS.
Okay. I think that, well, there's a couple points, but I do think that DPS is probably easier than calculating not necessarily eHP, but survivability, because now you don't need to find the damage distribution of the enemy, which is the biggest obstacle when it comes to eHP, or not eHP, but survivability rather. And when it comes to DPS, the biggest obstacle that can just be instantly put into a spreadsheet is the hit rate, like the physical hit rate of attacks. But I think that's much easier to calculate. And even things like the hit rate of bombs have already been done by other players just based on their spread and splash. So I think it will actually end up being a lot more manageable than you think. And not only that, but obviously DPS calcs would be a lot more popular than eHP, and you'll have more people looking up your eHP document as a result. So just a couple things to consider there.
You mentioned that calculating allied damage distributions might be easier than calculating enemy damage distributions. What's the reasoning behind that?
I mean, you know what the cooldown of your attacks are, but you don't know what the output of the enemy is going to be, right? Like, you know how many times you'll attack in a minute and when exactly your attacks comes out.
Ooh, it's the same for the enemy too. Data miners out there, shout out to you guys. They taught me a little bit about how to dig through the game's files, and if I'm pressed to it, if they're pressed to it too, they can tell you the different types of weapons and cooldowns that the enemy bullets have. But okay, the problem is actually probably in like the bullet distributions of the enemy. Like allied bullet barrages are like super simple, right? 7 shots, like in a triangle at the enemy, sure.
Yeah.
But we've seen the enemy bullet patterns, right? They're Toho-like. And okay, that's probably what makes the enemy damage distribution so much more terrible to calculate than allied DPS distributions. That's an interesting insight. I love you, Jimmy.
Yeah, and there's also other it's a lot more accessible to compare your work with other people's when it comes to DPS as opposed to eHP. There's everyone's going to make similar assumptions as opposed to eHP, I would assume.
I've compared my eHP document to 3 other eHP formulations. Number 1 is Ricist's eHP. Thank you, Ricist. Number 2 is China eHP. Not of like China Wall, but I grabbed the eHP document from China. Thank you, DFG. And the third one is Scar's eHP document. And you know, honestly, eHP theory is pretty well established along those lines too. I'm glad that between the 4 documents here, there's little to no disagreement. I say no disagreement. That's like way too much. There's little disagreement. Perhaps the eHP space is blessed in that there are fewer contenders in theory. I'm not sure. I'll dip my toes in DPS once I get more confident about it, you know?
Okay. All right, now, are there any questions that you have for me?
Okay. Earlier, like in the very beginning, you guys can scroll back to like the first 30 seconds of the video. I greeted your viewer base as gym cells. What other denonyms might you, offer your viewer base?
The one I typically use is guys. So I'll be
Guys?
like,
Okay,
sup
okay.
guys, and that's me talking to the viewers.
All right.
Because if you look at my audience breakdown, it's actually like over 98% guys.
Shout out to you, 2% of girls, I guess.
Less than 2%. Yeah.
Less than 2%.
Yeah.
How many Redders do you have?
0.1%. So we're pretty inclusive here. It's not zero.
All right.
No.
Improved hydraulic rudders do you have?
I haven't counted the number, but I also haven't made any new ones in a very long time. So I would estimate about 90-ish.
90. Okay, that's a very high amount. I'm at 90 myself. I think Suchi is also at 90.
Okay, then maybe it's not even 90. Because I know I had 90-something stags, so I feel like that's a safe assumption because I was crafting them both simultaneously. But if you have been crafting rudders this whole time, then maybe I'm closer to 70 than I am to 90, if I had to guess.
Perhaps. Hey, it'd be nice to count. Although no one cares except me.
Yeah.
Let's see.
Honestly, I haven't really been using them a lot these days because
that's slander.
No, the ships have just gotten so tanky that they're not needed anymore. Like,
I agree.
The times have we've moved on. We're onto bigger and better things. All these unique auxiliaries with their unique effects. They give you 500 HP, but then they also increase your damage. It's just
that's crazy. Whoa.
There's no need. There's no need for those things anymore. You know.
I can't believe we're in a post EHP era of Azure Lane.
Yeah.
The other question I had for you would be like, what things I need to account for considering a DPS list similar to the EHP tribe, but we went over that already.
Okay. Then so aside from Azure Lane, then what other interests do you have?
I'm like a total weeb. I'm not sure how total that is because like for the past 10 years, like normies have infiltrated our space. It's crazy.
Well, are you more of a weeb than Sam Hart because his power level was pretty high?
I went to Fanime Con like literally yesterday.
Okay.
I'm not sure how much of a weeb that is. I watch anime. Do I keep up seasonally? A little.
A little. So you're not quite at Sam Hart's level, who's still blasting out 10 anime per season in this day and age.
Definitely not like Sam Hart. What are the anime I'm watching right now? Fire Force, Apothecary Diaries, and my 16th watch. Honestly, of 86.
This current season we're on is a little bit lacking, I must say.
I would say that this is a trend that we've observed. It's a lot of trash isekai romance. Yes. And that's been like an ongoing, upgoing trend for the past like 3-4 years. I recently watched.
Recently I did watch Violet Evergarden and BBK Euphonium, which was not too recent, but still new relative to my timeline of watching anime, and they were really, really good. I feel like, this season I am only watching Windbreaker, which I consider to be slop, and there's something else I was watching. Oh yeah, the Sword of the Demon Hunter.
Ooh, I want to watch that one.
Kijingen Tosho. It's like episode 1. There's NTR.
Splendid.
Yeah. But it's like just slop. I started watching slop on like 2x speed, but
that's crazy.
Yeah, this season is particularly uninteresting, I would say.
I'm interested in like Rock is a Lady's Modesty. That seems fun. I probably want to finish My Hero Academia when that finishes. I've always been keeping it with My Hero Academia. I like rom-coms. There aren't that many good rom-coms out nowadays. The genre's been too saturated. As a fellow weeb, actually no, not just a weeb, but like a loser on his computer all the time. That's me. I was really impressed by our Mapo Tofu video because of all the skills I developed can't be performed without a computer. Like I'm a computational physicist, right? If you take my computer away from me, I become a regular human. And so I'm a nerd by heart, and most of the hobbies I get into are like for the sake of my education. So like your meal prep was sexy.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, cooking. A wise man once said that cooking is just little easy steps done well. All you gotta do is, chop your little garlic, your stupid little onion, take your time, and it's gonna come out well. It's definitely not rocket science. I can tell you that much.
Thanks for the encouragement.
Yeah.
I also do calisthenics.
Oh, okay, that's interesting.
Yeah, I could do like a handstand push-up, a 2-minute L-sit.
2-minute L-sit.
Yeah, it's like when you're on the ground, you put your legs up and you get your arms to hold your body in like an L position, so that you have to use your
Oh, I see. So
Yeah.
that's gonna be, I think that's gonna be triceps and
Yeah, it is
isometric.
triceps. And isometric. That's right.
Okay. How can you do a 1-arm pull-up?
If I grip my other arm using my other hand, then yes. But I cannot do like a raw 1-arm pull-up.
Oh, I see. What's your body weight, by the way, for reference?
Yeah, step 1 to good calisthenics people, weigh 120.
Oh, okay, that doesn't count then. You got it. Yeah.
I also play Beat Saber.
That's the VR game.
Yeah,
I used to play Osu once upon a time, believe it or not. I was 3-digit at my peak in the world.
That's legendary. You think you've retained those skills? To cut
Hell
that
no.
No? Damn.
Hell no.
I might
Dude,
I don't think so.
Man, I don't know. People think you train other skills playing Osu, like you could get better at FPS. No, I don't think that skill is very transferable.
Oh. Let's see.
Yeah.
Well, what skills have I? Okay, in Beat Saber, you chop the air.
Yeah.
When you chop the air, what does that improve?
Well, if you get into a sword fight at some point in your life, that will probably help.
Or if you're at a family party and you need to massage your elders, you have the stamina and speed to massage every single elder in like the living room.
Or if you get transferred into another world, then all you have is a sword and you gotta survive.
God, I hope. Now that impossible, because Beat Saber has like 2 swords.
You need both?
Do I need both? I'm not sure if it's transferable like that. I'm not sure. The swords are also like relatively weightless too, so maybe I'd be good at wielding like lightsabers, but not actual swords or like flashlights. I also do like astrophotography.
Astrophotography. That is beyond my pay grade.
Oh no, just like you guys, viewers too. Open up your Google tab and just search like, I don't know, Hubble Deep Field.
Wait, isn't that stuff CGI?
You would think. Actually, that depends on your definition of CGI.
Yeah, because like, I heard. Okay, this is just what I heard through the grapevines. All right. Maybe I don't believe in this. Maybe I do. But, all right. I heard that NASA is a wing of the military, and they take taxpayer dollars to pump out CGI pictures that are pretty much free of charge, and they make a lot of money for doing that. And in fact, you can't even go to space, so they're kind of just sitting around doing much of nothing all day, taking your tax money.
Okay. There are many true and false things about that claim. Is NASA a wing of the military? That is partially true. A lot of NASA's funding, though it comes from itself, a lot of the research done with NASA can be used for military applications. And lots of military applications can be used for space exploration applications. The second claim, that they sit around taking images all day. Honestly, I wonder if that's inaccurate at all. Like a lot of NASA infrastructure, it's like, yeah, technicians, mechanics, engineers, blah 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 blah. But ultimately, their entire end goal is to maintain like a fleet of vehicles to, guess what, produce images for us. So I guess I'll take a step back on that statement. There's a lot more nuance to all they do is sit around taking up our tax dollars, taking images. That might even be a little disingenuous. But as like a breadth statement, NASA as an agency, their goal is to take pictures for us. Sure, I'll let that slide. Number 3, we can't even go to space. Once again, the answer to that question, I think, also requires a lot of nuance. Your average viewer, and Jimmy, probably me, myself, too. Definitely me, myself, too. We cannot go to space. It requires an extreme amount of skill, luck, talent, and hard work to become an astronaut.
No. I mean, like, you would just hit the firmament.
Oh.
Right?
I've heard of this firmament of like a glass dome.
Yeah.
No, is it even
Yeah.
glass? I'll take it one step further. They're not talking about an actual glass dome. They're talking about the glass dome the same way we talk about the glass ceiling when you're trying to climb up in the industry. This is the same glass dome that requires a bunch of luck, skill, hard work, and talent to reach. And if you want to break the firmament, you have to become an astronaut.
I feel like you're not quite taking this seriously, but all right. How about this? If space is real, then riddle me this: how come there are no pictures of Antarctica from space?
Are there pictures of it? Let me Google that right now, actually. Antarctica.
Real pictures.
From space. I wonder if the ESA has anything. So we have satellites that orbit the Earth polarly, meaning that instead of like going around the Earth's equator the long way around, they go like up and down. And every once in a while, we can take a picture of Antarctica like that. Do such images exist? Is this from the ESA? No, this is not from the ESA. Landsat. Okay, NASA put out a thing called LIMA. Landsat Image Mosaic of Antarctica. Nope, that's not actually Antarctica.
Yeah, so anyway, all I'm saying is if they wanted to prove that the Earth was round and space was real, they could just snap a quick picture with their iPhone of Antarctica.
We can just leave it at that.
I'm going to leave it at that. Are there any shoutouts? Yeah, are there any shoutouts? Any final words or questions? Anything you want to shout out? Your socials? Anybody?
Suchiguma. We know him on ALO as Suchi Misinformation. He produces content, makes some good guides, and most importantly, interfaces his experience as a vet with my calcs. Having these considerations and keeping me on my toes is very valuable to me, because I'd otherwise be doing my calcs in an eHP echo chamber, and that's not good. To all you viewers out here, double check my eHP as much as you can, right? Criticize me, bring up good points as much as you can, because all together that makes a more robust eHP theory the more holes I cover. So it's up to you guys to help me find those holes.
All right, and with that, thank you for coming on, Mebot, and I'll leave all the links to the eHP document, the AA sheet, and your shoutouts in the description if anyone wants to check those out.
Thank you, Jimmy and Jim Cells, for having me. It's been good on here.
Yeah, and it's not Jim Cells, it's Guys.
Thank you, Jimmy and Guys, for having me on here.
Yeah. All right.